State lawmakers are talking a lot about changing Title IX procedures and reporting at the state's colleges and universities as they head into a new legislative session.
Sexual misconduct allegations and lawsuits against LSU are mostly driving these conversations. As Mike McDaniel explains, even the governor says there is a need for reform.
As the state's flagship university deals with continued controversy over how school administrators handled claims of sexual misconduct and Title IX violations, Governor John Bel Edwards says change must happen.
I support mandatory reporting for Title IX violations related to sexual assault and sexual harassment by higher education mandatory reporters.
That is now part of his legislative agenda when lawmakers return to the Capitol Monday.
Has anyone at LSU...
Thursday, a Senate committee was hoping to hear testimony from at least 10 school leaders, but none of them showed up. LSU's attorney told the committee he advised them not to because of a $50 million lawsuit filed Wednesday against the university.
This is a serious lawsuit. A civil RICO suit combined with allegations of discrimination and Title IX retaliation is going to be a messy affair.
Much of the controversy started after the Hush Blackwell Title IX review report was made public. That report details failures of how LSU handled claims of sexual misconduct. A big part of it centered on when Les Miles was head football coach. Because of the report, only 2 current employees in the athletics department were suspended. Governor Edwards says based on that report, these suspensions were reasonable and doesn't see a need for any current employee to be fired.
I don't think there's any doubt the most egregious behavior were by those who are no longer at LSU and haven't been in some years.
Edwards says firings should have happened, but should have happened years ago. In moving forward, at least 3 bills are now making their way through the legislature. Those bills are aimed at Title IX procedures and reporting for higher education.
That's where we can make real change.
One of them, House Bill 409, is authored by Representative Amy Freeman.
So 3 bills gives me hope that we're going to come up with some really good, stringent laws that can help students.
Lawmakers and the governor hope changes will mean better protections on campus and holding school leaders more accountable.
The days of protecting an institution are gone. There is no protecting an institution of higher education at the expense of those that you're supposed to be educating.
Mike McDaniel, Eyewitness News.